Have you ever wondered what it would be like to step into a world so different from your own that it feels like entering another dimension? Emma Rodriguez stood at the gates of the most magnificent estate she had ever seen, her heart racing as she realized this man wasn't just any single father. He was hiding a secret that would change everything. The massive iron gates slowly opened, revealing a world of wealth beyond her wildest dreams. But what she would discover about the mysterious man inside would leave her questioning everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and the true meaning of family. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Emma Rodriguez clutched her worn leather purse tighter as she approached the towering mansion that seemed to stretch endlessly across the perfectly manicured landscape. At 24, she'd never imagined herself standing before such grandeur, her reflection barely visible in the pristine black gates that stood between her and what she hoped would be a fresh start. Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed the intercom button, the weight of her dwindling bank account and overdue rent notices pressing down on her shoulders like an invisible burden she couldn't shake. The voice that crackled through the speaker was deep and measured, carrying an undertone of exhaustion that immediately made Emma's chest tighten with sympathy. "Ms. Rodriguez, I presume. Please come in." The gates hung to life, swinging open with mechanical precision that spoke of wealth and technology far beyond her modest upbringing in the cramped apartments of Queens. As she walked up the winding driveway, her second-hand shoes clicking against the polished stone, Emma couldn't help but wonder what kind of man lived in such isolation, surrounded by beauty but seemingly untouched by warmth. The front door opened before she could knock, revealing a man who seemed to embody contradictions in the most striking way. Daniel Ashworth stood before her, tall and lean with dark hair that appeared to have been run through with worried fingers, his navy sweater expensive but wrinkled as if he had slept in it. His eyes, a startling shade of green that reminded Emma of deep forest pools, held a distance that made her want to step closer and retreat simultaneously. There was something magnetic about his presence, yet she could sense the invisible walls he had built around himself, walls that seemed to keep the world at arm's length. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," Daniel said, his voice carrying that same measured tone she had heard through the intercom, though now she could detect the faintest hint of something vulnerable beneath the surface. "I should warn you, Lucas can be quite shy around new people. He's been through several nannies in the past few months, and I'm afraid none of them have worked out." The way he spoke about his son carried a heaviness that made Emma's heart ache, as if he were somehow failing as a father despite clearly caring deeply about the child's well-being. Emma nodded, her own shyness making her voice softer than usual as she replied, "I understand completely. Sometimes it just takes time to find the right connection." She had always been the quiet one, the girl who preferred listening to speaking, observing to participating, and perhaps that was exactly what this family needed. As Daniel led her through the vast foyer with its soaring ceilings and gleaming marble floors, Emma couldn't help but notice how their footsteps echoed in the space, creating a sound that felt both magnificent and lonely. The house was a masterpiece of modern architecture, blended seamlessly with classic elegance, every surface polished to perfection, every piece of furniture precisely placed as if arranged by an interior designer who understood aesthetics, but had never lived in a home that felt truly lived in. Emma's eyes took in the expensive artwork lining the walls, the crystal chandeliers casting rainbow patterns across the ceiling, the fresh flowers that looked professionally arranged rather than lovingly placed. It was beautiful, undeniably so, but it felt more like a museum than a home where a child played and laughed and made the kind of messes that spoke of happiness and security. "Lucas," Daniel called softly, as they approached a set of double doors that opened into what appeared to be a library that could rival any university collection. "I'd like you to meet Miss Rodriguez. She's here to talk with us about helping take care of you." His voice carried a gentleness when speaking to his son that it hadn't held when talking to Emma, and she found herself warming to this man who clearly loved his child, even if he struggled to express it. The little boy who emerged from behind a leather armchair was perhaps the most beautiful child Emma had ever seen. With his father's striking green eyes and hair that fell in soft waves around a face that seemed too serious for someone who couldn't be more than 6 years old, Lucas looked at Emma with the kind of careful assessment that spoke of a child who had learned to be cautious about the adults who entered and exited his life, and Emma felt her heart break a little at the guardedness she saw in his rough, young features. "Hello, Lucas," Emma said, crouching down to his level rather than towering over him as most adults did. "I like your library. Do you have a favorite book?" She had learned from her experience with her younger cousins that children responded better when she met them where they were, both physically and emotionally, rather than expecting them to adapt to her adult world. Lucas glanced at his father, as if seeking permission to speak, and Daniel nodded encouragingly. "I like the ones about dragons," Lucas said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're brave and strong, and they protect people." There was something wistful in the way he spoke about dragons, as if he longed for that kind of strength and protection in his own life. "Dragons are wonderful," Emma replied, her voice warm with genuine interest. "I've always thought they must be very lonely, being so powerful and different from everyone else. Maybe that's why they're so good at protecting people, because they understand what it feels like to be alone." She didn't know why she said it, but something in Lucas's expression told her she had touched on something important, something that resonated with his young heart. The interview, if it could be called that, continued in the garden where Lucas showed Emma his collection of smooth stones and explained the elaborate stories he had created about each one. Daniel watched from a distance, his expression unreadable, but Emma caught him studying her interactions with his son with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. There was something about the way he observed them, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle or understand something that had been eluding him for a long time. As the afternoon wore on, Emma found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't expected. Lucas's quiet nature complemented her own, and she discovered that they could communicate as much through comfortable silences as through words. When Lucas scraped his knee on the garden path, Emma was there with gentle hands and soothing words, cleaning the wound and applying a bandage with the kind of care that came naturally to her nurturing spirit. "You're hired," Daniel said simply, as they walked back toward the house, the golden afternoon light casting long shadows across the perfectly maintained lawn. "Lucas seems comfortable with you, and that's not something that happens often." There was relief in his voice, but also something else, something that sounded almost like hope. Emma's heart leaped with a mixture of excitement and nervousness as she realized her life was about to change completely. "Thank you, Mr. Ashworth. I promise I'll take good care of him." She meant it with every fiber of her being, already feeling protective of the quiet little boy who had somehow managed to touch her heart in just a few short hours. "Please, call me Daniel," he said, his formality softening slightly. "You'll be living here after all. Mrs. Henderson, our housekeeper, will show you to your room and help you get settled. We keep fairly regular hours, breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Lucas goes to bed at 8 on school nights, 8:30 on weekends." He paused, running his hand through his hair in that gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. "I travel quite a bit for work, so there will be times when you're solely responsible for him. I hope that's not a problem." "Not at all," Emma assured him, though she couldn't help but wonder what kind of work required so much travel. Daniel didn't seem like a businessman. In the traditional sense, there was something almost scholarly about him, as if his mind was always working on complex problems that existed in a realm far removed from the everyday world. Her room, when Mrs. Henderson led her to it, was larger than the entire apartment she had been sharing with 2 roommates. The 4-poster bed was draped in soft blue fabric that reminded her of summer skies, and the windows looked out over gardens that seemed to stretch on forever. There was a sitting area with a fireplace, a writing desk positioned to catch the morning light, and a bathroom that felt more like a spa than a functional space. It was beautiful, but it was also overwhelming in its luxury, making Emma feel small and out of place. "Mr. Ashworth is very generous with his staff," Mrs. Henderson said, her Scottish accent lending warmth to her words. "He's a good man, though he carries heavy burdens. The boy needs someone who understands that sometimes silence is more healing than words." There was knowing in the older woman's eyes, as if she had seen the family's struggles firsthand and had formed her own opinions about what they needed. That first night, as Emma lay in the impossibly comfortable bed, surrounded by more luxury than she had ever imagined, she found herself thinking about the man who had hired her. There was something haunting about Daniel Ashworth, something that spoke of loss and loneliness that went deeper than the normal challenges of single parenthood. The house, for all its beauty, felt like a beautiful cage, and she wondered what had happened to create such distance between a father and son who clearly loved each other. The next morning brought the gentle rhythm of a routine that felt both foreign and comforting. Emma woke early, dressing in the simple but professional clothes that comprised her limited wardrobe, and made her way downstairs to find Lucas already at the breakfast table, quietly eating cereal while reading a book about astronomy. Daniel was nowhere to be seen, but Mrs. Henderson bustled about the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who had been managing households for decades. "Mr. Ashworth left early for a meeting," Mrs. Henderson explained, pouring Emma a cup of coffee that smelled heavenly. "He'll be back this evening, but he wanted me to tell you that Lucas has a doctor's appointment at 2 o'clock. Nothing serious, just a routine checkup, but he thought you should know in case the boy seems nervous about it." Emma nodded, settling into the chair across from Lucas and smiling at him over her own breakfast. "Good morning, Lucas. What are you reading about today?" She had learned that starting with his interests was the best way to draw him into conversation, and she was genuinely curious about the things that captured his imagination. "Black holes," Lucas replied, his eyes lighting up with the first real enthusiasm she had seen from him. "Did you know that they're so dense that not even light can escape from them? It's like they're invisible, but they're so powerful they can bend space and time." His voice grew stronger as he spoke about something he was passionate about, and Emma found herself genuinely fascinated by his knowledge. "That's incredible," Emma said, and she meant it. "It sounds like they're mysterious and powerful, kind of like dragons in space." She had discovered that connecting new information to things Lucas already loved helped him feel more confident about sharing his thoughts and ideas. The morning passed peacefully, with Emma learning more about Lucas's routines and preferences. He was a child who thrived on predictability and gentle guidance, and she found that her natural tendency toward quiet observation served her well in understanding his needs. They spent time in the garden, collecting more stones for his collection, and creating stories about the creatures that might live in the elaborate fairy houses someone had built among the flower beds. The doctor's appointment revealed more about the family's dynamics than Emma had expected. Lucas clung to her hand as they waited in the pediatrician's office, and she realized that she had already become a source of comfort for him in ways that surprised her. Dr. Martinez, a kind woman with graying hair and gentle hands, examined Lucas with a sort of thoroughness that spoke of genuine care. "He's healthy as a horse," Dr. Martinez told Emma privately while Lucas was getting dressed. "But I can see the anxiety in his posture, the way he watches for approval before he speaks. He's been through a lot of changes in his young life, and stability is what he needs most right now. You seem to provide that for him naturally." Emma felt a surge of protectiveness toward Lucas that surprised her with its intensity. "Is there anything specific I should watch for or be concerned about?" she asked, wanting to make sure she was providing the best possible care for the little boy who was already becoming so important to her. "Just continue being patient and consistent," Dr. Martinez advised. "Children like Lucas often blossom when they feel safe and understood. From what I've observed today, you're exactly what he needs." That evening, Daniel returned home to find Emma and Lucas in the library, curled up together on the large sofa as Emma read aloud from a book about space exploration. The sight seemed to stop him in his tracks, and Emma looked up to find him watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. There was something soft in his eyes, something that looked almost like longing, but it was quickly replaced by his usual careful distance. "How was the appointment?" Daniel asked, his voice carrying that familiar measured tone, though Emma was beginning to detect subtle variations in his inflection that suggested deeper emotions beneath the surface. "Perfect," Emma replied, gently closing the book and encouraging Lucas to tell his father about the stickers Dr. Martinez had given him. Lucas was very brave, and Dr. Martinez said he's growing strong and healthy. Daniel's face relaxed slightly at this news, and Emma realized that beneath his composed exterior, he worried about his son constantly. "That's good to hear," he said, settling into the chair across from them. "Lucas, did you tell Miss Rodriguez about the meteor shower that's supposed to be visible this weekend?" Lucas shook his head, suddenly shy again in his father's presence, and Emma felt her heart ache at the invisible barrier that seemed to exist between them. "A meteor shower sounds amazing," she said encouragingly. "I've never seen one before." "We could watch it together," Lucas said quietly, glancing between Emma and his father as if testing the waters of this new family dynamic. "From the roof deck. Dad showed me how to use the telescope." Daniel's expression softened further, and Emma saw a glimpse of the man he might be if he allowed himself to let down his guard. "That sounds like a wonderful idea," he said, his voice gentler than she had heard it before. "We'll make hot chocolate and stay up late to watch the stars." Over the following weeks, Emma settled into a routine that felt increasingly natural and comfortable. She learned that Lucas was incredibly intelligent, reading at a level far beyond his years, and possessing a curiosity about the world that was both inspiring and heartbreaking. He asked questions about everything, from why flowers needed sunlight to how airplanes stayed in the sky, and Emma found herself researching topics she had never considered just to keep up with his eager mind. Daniel remained an enigma, present but distant, kind but guarded. He worked from a home office that Emma had never seen, disappearing behind closed doors for hours at a time, and emerging only for meals or brief conversations about Lucas's needs and schedule. Sometimes, she would catch him watching her and Lucas together, his expression unreadable but intense, as if he were trying to understand something that eluded him. The meteor shower night changed something fundamental in their dynamic. Emma had dressed warmly and helped Lucas into his winter coat, gathering blankets and thermoses of hot chocolate for their astronomical adventure. Daniel joined them on the roof deck, which Emma discovered was equipped with professional-grade telescopes and comfortable seating that spoke of significant investment in stargazing equipment. "There," Daniel said softly, pointing toward a streak of light that blazed across the dark sky. "Make a wish, Lucas." His voice carried a tenderness that Emma had never heard before, and she found herself studying his profile in the dim light, noting the way his features softened when he focused on his son. Lucas closed his eyes tightly, his small face scrunched in concentration, and Emma felt her heart swell with affection for this serious little boy who approached even wishes with such solemnity. When he opened his eyes, he looked at Emma with a smile that was brighter than any meteor, and she realized that somehow, in just a few short weeks, she had become part of something precious and fragile. "What did you wish for?" Emma asked gently, settling the blanket more securely around Lucas's shoulders. "I can't tell you, or it won't come true," Lucas replied seriously. "But it's something really good." He looked at his father, then back at Emma, and she had the strangest feeling that his wish involved both of them in ways she couldn't yet understand. As they watched the celestial display, Emma became aware of Daniel's presence beside her in ways that made her pulse quicken unexpectedly. He had moved closer to adjust the telescope, and she caught the faint scent of his cologne, something woody and masculine that made her think of autumn forests and quiet strength. When he handed her the hot chocolate, their fingers brushed briefly, and she felt a spark of electricity that seemed to surprise them both. "Emma," Daniel said quietly, using her first name for the first time since she had started working for him. "I want you to know how grateful I am for what you've done for Lucas. He's like a different child since you arrived." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest at his words, but it was accompanied by a flutter of nervousness that she couldn't quite identify. "He's an amazing boy," she replied softly. "It's easy to care about him." "It's more than that," Daniel continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've brought something to this house that's been missing for a long time. Lucas hasn't smiled this much since—" He trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished, but Emma sensed that he had been about to reveal something significant about their past. The moment was interrupted by Lucas's excited gasp as another particularly bright meteor streaked across the sky, but Emma found herself thinking about Daniel's words for days afterward. There was a story there, a sadness that explained the distance she sensed in him, and she found herself wanting to understand what had created such walls around a man who was clearly capable of deep love. As autumn deepened into winter, Emma's relationship with both father and son continued to evolve in ways that surprised her. Lucas grew more confident and outgoing, his laughter filling the house in ways that transformed its atmosphere completely. He began to initiate conversations, to share his thoughts and dreams with an openness that spoke of growing trust and security. Emma found herself falling in love with his bright mind and gentle heart, feeling protective of him in ways that went far beyond professional duty. Daniel remained more of a mystery, but Emma began to notice small changes in his behavior. He lingered at breakfast, asking about Lucas's plans for the day, and occasionally sharing stories from his own childhood that revealed glimpses of the man beneath the carefully constructed exterior. Sometimes she would find him in the library after Lucas had gone to bed, reading quietly by the fire, and he would invite her to join him with a gesture so subtle she might have missed it if she hadn't been paying attention. These evening conversations became precious to Emma, opportunities to see Daniel when his guard was down and his natural intelligence and thoughtfulness could shine through. He asked her about her life, her dreams, her thoughts on everything from literature to philosophy, and Emma found herself opening up to him in ways she had never expected. There was something about his quiet attention that made her feel heard and understood in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. "You're different from what I expected," Daniel said one evening as they sat by the fire, Lucas safely asleep upstairs. "Most people in your position would have asked about my work by now, about why we live the way we do." Emma looked up from the book she had been reading, surprised by the directness of his comment. "I figured you'd tell me what you wanted me to know when you were ready," she replied honestly. "Everyone has their reasons for privacy." Daniel studied her face in the firelight, his green eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "You're not curious? Not even a little?" Emma felt her cheeks warm under his scrutiny. "Of course I'm curious," she admitted. "But I'm more interested in who you are than what you do. Your work is just one part of you, and it's not the part that matters most to Lucas." Something shifted in Daniel's expression, as if her words had touched something deep within him that he had kept carefully protected. "You see more than most people," he said quietly. "That's a rare gift." The conversation stayed with Emma long after she had gone to bed that night, and she found herself thinking about the way Daniel had looked at her, as if he were seeing her for the first time. There was an attraction growing between them that she couldn't deny, but it was complicated by her position in his household and her genuine care for Lucas. She had never been in a situation like this before, where her heart was being pulled in directions that seemed both natural and impossible. Winter brought new challenges and new joys. Lucas caught a mild cold that kept him home from school for several days, and Emma found herself playing the role of nurse as well as nanny, bringing him soup and reading stories while he recovered. Daniel surprised her by taking time off from his mysterious work to help care for his son, and Emma got to see a different side of him as he patiently took Lucas's temperature and sat by his bedside until the little boy fell asleep. "You're a good father," Emma told him one evening as they cleaned up the kitchen after Lucas had finally eaten a full dinner for the first time in days. "He adores you, you know." Daniel paused in his task of loading the dishwasher, his hands stilling on the plates. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough for him," he said quietly. "If I'm giving him what he needs." Emma felt her heart clench at the vulnerability in his voice. "He's happy," she said firmly. "He's healthy and smart and kind, and that's because of you. The love is there, Daniel. He feels it even when you're not sure how to show it." Daniel looked at her with an expression that was almost grateful, and Emma realized that beneath his success and confidence, he was just as uncertain and human as anyone else. "Thank you," he said simply, but the words carried a weight that told her how much her reassurance meant to him. As Lucas recovered and life returned to normal, Emma found herself more aware than ever of the growing connection between herself and Daniel. Their conversations became longer and more intimate, touching on subjects that revealed their deepest thoughts and beliefs. Emma learned that Daniel had grown up in a working-class family, that his success had come through determination and intelligence rather than privilege, and that he struggled with the isolation that his wealth and position had created. "I never expected to feel so cut off from the world," he told her one evening as they walked through the garden, the winter air crisp and clear around them. "Success is supposed to bring freedom, but sometimes it feels more like a prison." Emma understood more than he knew. "Maybe it's not about the success itself," she suggested carefully. "Maybe it's about what you do with it, how you let it change you, or choose not to let it change you." Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "You have a way of seeing things that makes me question everything I thought I knew," he said softly. "It's both unsettling and wonderful." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities and the growing awareness that their relationship was becoming something neither of them had planned or expected. Emma felt her heart racing as Daniel stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath in the cold air. "Emma," he said, her name a whisper that seemed to carry all the questions and hopes that had been building between them. "I don't want to complicate things for you, but I can't pretend anymore that what I feel is purely professional." Emma felt her world tilt on its axis as she realized that the attraction she had been fighting was not one-sided. "I feel it too," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet garden. "But Lucas adores you," Daniel said firmly. "Whatever this is between us, we'll figure it out together. But I can't keep pretending that you're just his nanny, not when you've become so much more to both of us." Before Emma could respond, Daniel leaned down and kissed her, soft and tentative at first, then with growing confidence as she responded to his touch. It was a kiss that felt like coming home and starting an adventure all at once, filled with promise and possibility, and the kind of hope that Emma had never dared to dream of. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Emma felt as if the world had rearranged itself around her. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice shaky with emotion. "Now we take it one day at a time," Daniel said, his hands gentle as they framed her face. "We figure out how to be a family, all three of us." The word family sent a thrill through Emma that she had never experienced before. She had always been on the outside looking in, the shy girl who watched other people's happiness from a distance. Now, suddenly, she was being invited to be part of something beautiful and real and lasting. Spring brought changes that went beyond the season. Emma's relationship with Daniel deepened into something that felt both natural and miraculous, built on shared conversations, stolen moments, and the growing certainty that they had found something rare and precious together. Lucas seemed to sense the shift in the household dynamics, and rather than being confused or upset, he appeared to bloom in the warmth of their growing connection. "Are you going to marry Dad?" Lucas asked Emma one afternoon as they worked together in the garden, planting flowers that would bloom throughout the summer. His question was matter-of-fact, as if he had been thinking about it for a while and had decided it was a logical progression. Emma felt her cheeks warm at the directness of his question. "Would you like that?" she asked carefully, wanting to understand his feelings before revealing her own hopes. Lucas nodded enthusiastically. "Then you'd be my mom, and we'd be a real family forever." His simple statement carried such hope and certainty that Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. "You'd want me to be your mom?" Emma asked, her voice thick with emotion. "You already are, kind of," Lucas replied, with the wisdom that sometimes surprised her. "You take care of me and love me and make Dad smile. That's what moms do." That evening, Emma shared Lucas's conversation with Daniel, watching his face carefully for his reaction. To her surprise, he smiled with a warmth that transformed his entire expression. "He's right, you know," Daniel said, pulling Emma into his arms as they stood in the kitchen after dinner. "You are already his mother in every way that matters. And I've been thinking about making it official." Emma's heart stopped beating for a moment before resuming at double speed. "What are you saying?" she whispered. Instead of answering with words, Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emma's hands flew to her mouth as he dropped to one knee in the middle of the kitchen, looking up at her with eyes that held all the love and hope in the world. "Emma Rodriguez," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion she could see in his face. "You came into our lives when we needed you most, and you've made us whole in ways I never thought possible. Will you marry me? Will you be Lucas's mother and my wife, and help us build the family we've all been dreaming of?" Through her tears, Emma could see Lucas peeking around the corner, his face bright with excitement and anticipation. This was her moment, her chance to say yes to the life she had never dared to imagine for herself. "Yes," she whispered, then said it again more loudly. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, a beautiful solitaire that caught the light and threw rainbows across the kitchen walls. As he stood and kissed her, Lucas came running in to hug them both, creating a moment of pure joy that Emma knew she would remember for the rest of her life. But even as she basked in her happiness, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there were still secrets in Daniel's life that she didn't understand. His work remained a mystery, his travels unexplained, and sometimes she caught glimpses of a world beyond their domestic happiness that she couldn't quite comprehend. The answer came unexpectedly one evening in late spring, as Emma was cleaning up after dinner. Daniel had gone to his office to handle some business, and Lucas was upstairs getting ready for bed. Emma was wiping down the kitchen counters when she noticed Daniel's laptop open on the breakfast bar, displaying what appeared to be a business article. Her curiosity finally got the better of her, and she glanced at the screen, expecting to see something routine and boring. Instead, she found herself staring at a photograph of Daniel, dressed in an expensive suit and standing before a backdrop that read, "Tech Vision Innovations." The headline made her heart stop. Reclusive CEO Daniel Ashworth makes rare public appearance at tech conference. Emma read the article with growing amazement and understanding. Daniel wasn't just successful. He was one of the most influential technology entrepreneurs in the country, the founder and CEO of a company that had revolutionized artificial intelligence and data security. His net worth was listed in the hundreds of millions, and the article described him as a visionary who had changed the tech industry while maintaining an almost legendary privacy about his personal life. Suddenly, everything made sense. The house, the travel, the careful distance he maintained from the world, the resources that seemed unlimited, the way he could work from home and set his own schedule. Daniel wasn't just wealthy, he was extraordinarily successful in ways that Emma had never imagined possible. "You weren't supposed to see that," Daniel's voice came from behind her, and Emma spun around to find him standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," Emma said quickly, feeling as if she had been caught doing something wrong. "I wasn't snooping, I just saw the screen and—" She trailed off, realizing how weak her explanation sounded. Daniel moved closer, his eyes searching her face. "Are you upset?" he asked quietly. "I know I should have told you earlier, but it's complicated. My work, my public profile, it's not something I wanted to burden you with." Emma stared at him, trying to process this new information and what it meant for their relationship. "You're not just successful," she said slowly. "You're famous. You're one of the most powerful people in technology. Does that change how you feel about me?" Daniel asked, and Emma could hear the vulnerability beneath his carefully controlled tone. Emma considered his question seriously, thinking about the man she had come to love over the past months. "No," she said finally. "It explains a lot, but it doesn't change who you are to me. You're still the father who worries about Lucas, the man who reads by the fire, the person who sees me for who I really am." Relief flooded Daniel's features, and Emma realized that her acceptance meant more to him than she had understood. "I was afraid you'd see me differently," he admitted. "That you'd think I had deceived you, or that our relationship was somehow tainted by the inequality between us." Emma moved closer to him, reaching up to touch his face gently. "The only thing that matters to me is that you're good to Lucas and that you love me," she said firmly. "Everything else is just details." Daniel kissed her then, deep and grateful, and Emma felt their relationship settle into a new level of honesty and understanding. She finally knew the full truth about the man she was going to marry, and rather than changing her feelings, it only made her love him more for the trust he had placed in her. Over the following weeks, Daniel began to share more about his work and the challenges of balancing his public responsibilities with his private life. Emma learned about the pressure he faced from investors and the media, the constant scrutiny that made him protective of his family's privacy, and the weight of making decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions of users of his company's products. "Sometimes I think about stepping back," he told her one evening as they sat on the roof deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "I've made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and I want to focus on what really matters." Emma understood his conflict, but she also recognized the passion he felt for his work when he talked about the problems his company was solving and the innovations they were developing. "You don't have to choose between your work and your family," she said gently. "You just have to find a way to make them work together." "You make it sound so simple," Daniel said, smiling at her with the kind of warmth that still made her heart skip a beat. Maybe it is simple, Emma replied. Maybe the complicated part is thinking it has to be complicated. As their wedding day approached, Emma found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had started as a shy girl desperate for work, and somehow she had found herself about to marry one of the most successful men in the country and become the mother of the most wonderful child she had ever known. It felt like a fairy tale, but it was grounded in something real and deep and lasting. The wedding itself was small and intimate, held in the garden that had become such a special place for their family. Lucas served as ring bearer, his face glowing with happiness as he carefully carried the rings down the aisle. Mrs. Henderson cried tears of joy, and even the usually stoic household staff seemed moved by the emotion of the day. As Daniel and Emma exchanged vows they had written themselves, speaking of love and commitment and the promise to build a life together that honored both their individual dreams and their shared hopes, Emma felt as if she were stepping into a new version of herself. She was no longer the shy girl who had stood at the gates of this house months ago, unsure of her place in the world. She was a woman who was loved and cherished, a mother who was needed and wanted, a partner who was valued and respected. I promise to love you not just for who you are today, but for who you're still becoming, Emma said, her voice strong and clear as she looked into Daniel's eyes. I promise to be a safe harbor for you when the world feels overwhelming, and to celebrate with you when your dreams come true. Daniel's response was equally heartfelt, his words carrying the weight of his commitment and the depth of his feelings. I promise to trust you with my heart and my fears, to share my successes and my struggles, and to build with you the kind of love that makes everything else possible. When they kissed as husband and wife, Emma felt the last pieces of her old life fall away, replaced by something beautiful and new and full of possibility. Lucas cheered and clapped, and Emma realized that they had indeed become the family they had all been dreaming of, each finding in the others what they had been missing all along. The months that followed their wedding brought a settling into their new roles that felt both natural and miraculous. Emma officially adopted Lucas, a process that filled her with such profound joy that she cried during the entire court hearing. Watching the judge declare that she was now legally Lucas's mother felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place, completing a picture that had been years in the making. Daniel began to involve Emma more in his business life, not because she asked, but because he wanted to share that part of himself with her. She attended a few carefully selected public events, always maintaining the privacy they both valued, but allowing the world to see glimpses of the happiness they had found together. Emma discovered that she enjoyed meeting the brilliant minds that Daniel worked with, finding herself drawn into conversations about innovation and technology that challenged her intellect in ways she had never expected. You have excellent instincts about people, Daniel told her after a particularly important business dinner where Emma had immediately identified a potential partner who turned out to be exactly what the company needed. I'm thinking of offering you a formal consulting position. Emma laughed, still amazed by how much her life had expanded beyond anything she had ever imagined. I think I'll stick to being a wife and mother for now, she said, though she was touched by his confidence in her abilities. But I love being part of your world, even from the sidelines. Lucas thrived in their new family dynamic, his confidence growing by leaps and bounds as he settled into the security of knowing that Emma would always be there. He began to call her mom naturally and without prompting, and each time Emma heard the word, it filled her with a warmth that seemed to start in her chest and radiate outward until she felt as if she were glowing from within. The house itself seemed transformed by their happiness, no longer feeling like a beautiful museum, but like a true home filled with laughter and love and the comfortable chaos of a family that was actively living rather than simply existing. Emma added her own touches to the decor, photographs of their family adventures, artwork that Lucas created, small mementos that spoke of shared experiences and cherished memories. One evening in early fall, as they sat together in the library that had become Emma's favorite room in the house, Lucas looked up from his homework with a serious expression that Emma had learned usually preceded an important question. Mom, he said, the words still giving Emma's heart a little skip of joy. Do you think we could have a baby brother or sister someday? Emma felt her cheeks warm as she glanced at Daniel, who was trying unsuccessfully to hide his smile behind his book. They had talked about expanding their family, but hearing Lucas express the same hope made it feel more real and immediate. "Would you like that?" Emma asked, settling beside him on the sofa and smoothing his hair with gentle fingers. "I think I'd be a good big brother," Lucas said thoughtfully. "I could teach them about stars and dragons and how to collect the best rocks. And I could protect them from being scared of new things." Daniel set down his book and joined them on the sofa, his arm going around Emma's shoulders in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "I think you'd be an excellent big brother," he said warmly. "What do you think, Emma? Are you ready for another adventure?" Emma looked around at the life they had built together, at the man who had become her anchor, and the boy who had stolen her heart, and felt such overwhelming gratitude that she could barely speak. "I think," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion, "that we're ready for whatever comes next, as long as we face it together." 6 months later, Emma stood in the nursery they had prepared together, holding their daughter Sarah in her arms, while Lucas sat nearby, reading a story about brave princesses to his baby sister. Daniel watched from the doorway, his expression soft with the kind of contentment that came from knowing that all his dreams had not only come true, but had exceeded anything he had dared to hope for. The shy girl who had once stood at the gates of this house, desperate for work and uncertain of her place in the world, had found something she had never even known she was looking for. She had found a love that transformed her, a purpose that fulfilled her, and a family that needed her just as much as she needed them. As Sarah fell asleep in her arms, and Lucas curled up beside them with his head on Emma's shoulder, Emma realized that sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the simplest needs. She had needed a job, Daniel had needed help with his son, and Lucas had needed someone to understand his quiet heart. But what they had found together was so much more than any of them had been looking for. They had found each other, and in doing so, they had discovered that home wasn't a place or a thing, but a feeling that came from being truly known and completely loved. Emma had learned that she was capable of more courage than she had ever imagined, that her quiet strength was exactly what this family had needed, and that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin not with fireworks and grand gestures, but with gentle moments and patient understanding. Daniel had found in Emma not just a partner, but a true companion, someone who saw past his success and wealth to the man underneath, someone who could share both his burdens and his joys. He had learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness, but strength, that letting someone truly know him only made their love deeper and more meaningful. And Lucas had gained not just a mother but a champion, someone who understood that his sensitivity was a gift rather than a weakness, someone who would always believe in his dreams and help him find the courage to pursue them. He had learned that families could be created as well as born, that love was a choice as much as a feeling, and that home was wherever the people who cared about you decided to be. As Emma tucked Lucas into bed that night, he looked up at her with eyes that sparkled with contentment and security. "Mom," he said softly, "remember when you first came here and I wished on that shooting star?" "I remember," Emma said, settling on the edge of his bed and smoothing his covers with the motherly gestures that had become second nature. To her, "I wished for a family that would stay forever," Lucas confided, his voice heavy with approaching sleep. "And it came true, didn't it?" Emma felt tears prick at her eyes as she leaned down to kiss his forehead. "It came true for all of us, sweetheart. Sweet dreams." As she turned off his light and quietly closed his door, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. She had started as an employee, become a friend, grown into a partner, and evolved into the heart of a family that was stronger and more beautiful than any of them could have imagined on their own. Walking down the hallway toward the bedroom she shared with Daniel, Emma passed the window that looked out over the gardens where she and Lucas had first collected stones and created stories. The same moon that had witnessed her first nervous steps onto this property now shone down on a woman who had found her place in the world, who had discovered that she was capable of both giving and receiving the kind of love that changes everything. Daniel was waiting for her, Sarah sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside their bed, and as Emma settled into his arms, she felt the complete rightness of their life together. They had built something beautiful from the simple foundation of kindness and understanding, something that would continue to grow and deepen with each passing day. "Thank you," Daniel whispered into her hair, his voice soft in the quiet darkness. "For what?" Emma asked, though she suspected she knew what he meant. "For seeing us," he said simply. "For seeing what we could become and helping us get there." Emma turned in his arms so she could look at his face in the moonlight streaming through their bedroom windows. "Thank you for letting me," she whispered back. "For trusting me with your heart and Lucas's happiness. For showing me that I was capable of more than I ever dreamed." They held each other in comfortable silence, listening to the soft sounds of their daughter's breathing and the settling noises of their home around them. Outside, the gardens they had walked through during their courtship stretched away in the moonlight, and somewhere in the distance, Emma could see the lights of the city where she had once struggled to find her place. She thought about the girl she had been, shy and uncertain, desperately responding to job advertisements and hoping for a chance to prove herself. That girl could never have imagined that her search for employment would lead her to this moment, to this love, to this family that felt like the answer to every prayer she had never quite known how to pray. Daniel's breathing had evened out into the rhythm of sleep, but Emma lay awake a little longer, savoring the weight of his arm around her, the soft sounds of their children sleeping safely nearby, the profound sense of belonging that filled every corner of their shared life. She had learned that the best fairy tales weren't about princes rescuing princesses, but about people finding in each other the courage to become the best versions of themselves. As sleep finally claimed her, Emma's last conscious thought was one of gratitude. For the courage that had brought her to Daniel's door, for the love that had welcomed her into their family, and for the future that stretched ahead of them, bright with possibility and rich with the promise of more adventures to come. She had found her happily ever after, not in a castle or a palace, but in a home filled with laughter and love, in the arms of a man who cherished her, and in the hearts of children who called her mom. The shy girl who had taken a job as a nanny had discovered that sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin with the simplest acts of faith, and that love, when it's real and true and patient, has the power to create families, heal hearts, and turn ordinary moments into magic that lasts a lifetime.